to take this position, then they're effectively outflanking you on your left. But they're not really doing that for this specific reason. All of the rhetoric that I've seen come from them is cut off the weapons to Ukraine. Full stop. That's where they end it. Like, okay, we're not gonna do a blank check to Ukraine. Okay, look, I agree with that position, right? But what's missing from their position? They're not saying anything about negotiation and diplomacy. They just want to cut off the weapons to Ukraine, which means it's only a matter of time until Russia takes over all of Ukraine, or at the very least, certainly the eastern portion of Ukraine. So the real position that I think is the correct position for the lefties to take is peace deal is paramount. That comes first and foremost. That's the most important thing. And then also, you can reduce or eliminate the weapons to Ukraine. I told you guys from the very beginning, I was definitely in favor of the first few packages of weapons to Ukraine and support to Ukraine for the very simple reason that this was an illegal and offensive imperialist invasion by Russia against Ukraine. And so they deserve a right to have a fighting chance to protect their country. Now, where I differ, of course, is that doesn't mean a blank check. That doesn't mean, 16 packages later or whatever it is, $80 billion later, that, it's now heresy and pro-Putin to say, hey, let's cut the weapons off. No, I disagree with that. But again, I think the most important point to stress is I don't agree with the Tucker Carlson position or the Marjorie Taylor Greene position or the Kevin McCarthy position of just cut off weapons. No, it is peace deal and cut off weapons. Peace deal is the most important part. So again, the position of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in the letter that they took back was, let's make sure we do negotiation and diplomacy to try to find a way out of this. That's what they were saying. And by the way, they were super clear in that. They don't fully agree with me, because their position in that letter was like, we'll give Ukraine anything and everything they want in terms of weapons, but also let's talk. No, I think the correct position is honestly to marry the far-right position, the Tucker Carlson position effectively, with the Congressional Progressive Caucus position of negotiation, diplomacy, and let's cut off the weapons to try to de-escalate, avert this, find a way out. And look, it is very possible that if you do that, you can get some sort of a settlement that's bare minimum agreeable to both sides, and the world ends up much better as a result of it. That's very possible. But now it's also possible the opposite happens, and you make this peace agreement, and then Putin signs it, agrees to it, and then effectively ignores it and keeps taking more territory. And if that were to happen, then everybody who was screaming, oh my god, you're Neville Chamberlain, they were correct. But that's yet to be seen whether or not that is true. And by the way, even if that does turn out to be true, that, oh, we were Neville Chamberlain and we should have never negotiated in the first place, we should have never made a peace deal in the first place, well then, at least, the people who advocated for a peace agreement bought us into the 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be, before World War III. Because, make no mistake about it, these are the consequences of that, right? Like, if he goes back on an agreement and takes more territory, then I don't think there's going to be any way to stop the U.S. and Russia from escalating to a point of absolute crisis where we're talking about cataclysmic, apocalyptic, civilization-ending type events. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it's really not when you're talking about, a World War III where now we're in the nuclear age. So, look, credit to the PodSave guys, right? Because the argument they're making is like, don't get outflanked by these idiots on the far right. The position of that letter was the correct position, because they also pointed out in the letter, I think, things which virtually everybody except the biggest idiots in the country agrees to, which is, yes, Russia invaded Ukraine. Yes, Russia is being imperialist. This is an offensive invasion. This violates international law. To one extent or another, you could say what Russia is doing to Ukraine is very similar to what the U.S. did to Iraq. I think a lot of the reason why Putin did it is because there's, massive oil and natural gas wealth in Ukraine, and they found it in 2012 off the coast of Crimea, and oh, would you look at that, in 2014, Putin took Crimea. So I think the oil and gas has a lot to do with it. I think it's effectively imperial ambition, because Putin even said in his speech he thinks Ukraine is a fake state. They never should have given away that territory in the first place. This is the stuff that he believes in. This is the stuff that he said. So I don't remember where I was going with that point, but bottom line is their argument is correct. Their argument is correct. Oh, I was talking about the CPC letter. They acknowledged all of that while then also saying, but for the sake of humanity and to avoid nuclear war and to avoid, a war that's dragged on for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, with hundreds of thousands dead, perhaps, even if it just stays a conventional war, this is what we need to do. So you can acknowledge all the facts about the situation while also saying, let's try to find a way out. Let's not be crazy. And the sad thing is, and this is what the Pod Save guys are realizing, is that now, functionally, there is no difference in the Congressional Progressive Caucus position between theirs and a neocon's position. I mean, this is Bill Kristol, right? This is David Frum. This is their ideology. No talking, no negotiating ever. We just need to flat out defeat the enemy, whatever that means, and we're going to act like we live in a comic book world where it's pure good versus pure evil, and that's the end of the conversation, and, the just will prevail, or whatever the fuck. And it's like, okay, we don't live in a movie, though. This is not a movie. This is real life. And the Pod Save guys are realizing this requires a hell of a lot more nuance than they're bringing to the table, and it was a cowardly move to back off and redact that letter. So, look, credit to the Pod Save guys. You can't say I'm not fair. These are guys who I would disagree with a lot, and it is like the competing vision for the Democratic Party. Right? Like, they represent the status quo in a sense. They represent the continuation of Bill Clinton politics and Obama-style politics. And, of course, my argument is, as well as Bernie Sanders' argument and many others, is like, let's return to a New Deal-type Democratic Party, an FDR-type Democratic Party. So these are guys who, in many ways, are like our biggest enemies, right? But you got to give credit where it's due, and they're right on this. They're right on this. You need to... I feel like I live in the twilight zone when you have a situation where even just the mild suggestion of negotiation and diplomacy is treated as insane. And it is. That is how it's treated. Because the only historical analogy people can possibly think of is Putin is Hitler. But that's not the only war that's ever happened. You know, and there are... It is possible you create a deal and this motherfucker is looking for a way out and he'll take it. Right? That's the other thing. And a lot of people refuse to acknowledge that that's even a possibility. But it is. It is a possibility. You know, the economy contracted. He conscripted 300,000 fighters who don't want to fucking go. You have the recruitment centers being shot up as we speak. Like, there's dissent in his inner circle. He probably fears he's going to get toppled or some shit, too. He might be looking for a way out. And if that's the case, then you might actually find a way to create some sort of a deal which would work. Where he could do some bullshit face-saving thing to his own population, and the Ukrainians can... sort of get back to business as usual. Get back to being not under the occupation of an imperialistic army, right? So, look, I hope that's the case. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but that's the path we need to go down, because this Twilight Zone shit of any talk of negotiation is insanity. I don't know, man. It's not good. So Joe Biden has been on the campaign trail, and... Look, I have to say it. Even though, like, his style has been lacking, of course, because he's half dead, he's a zombie, and so you're not going to be all that charismatic speaker, if that's your situation, he has been hitting a lot of the right notes, surprisingly so, even. And now we have a new thing to add to that list. He's talking about oil companies and how they're price gouging, and let's take a look and we'll react.
Look, those excess profits are going back to the shareholders and their executives instead of going to lower prices at the pump and give relief to the American people who deserve it and need it. I'm going to keep harping on it. They talk about me picking on them. They ain't seen nothing yet. I mean it. It outrages me. And even though my Republican friends in Congress seem to be hoping for a recession, they were very disappointed. They were very disappointed yesterday. The GDP report showed the economy's growing. It's growing. In fact, the economy grew 2.6% last quarter.
All right, so that last part is true, and I was surprised by that jobs report, to be honest, because I thought with the interest rates going up, you're going to see a contracting economy. I thought you were going to see that. I thought you were going to see a lot of layoffs and unemployment tick up. Didn't happen yet. I think it will eventually. And in fact, the Fed is actively trying to facilitate that, which, by the way, is a whole conversation in and of itself. That's fucking insanity. But he's right about that last part. Now, this is the toughest I've seen him get on the price gougers. He's calling them out directly. And I think he's referencing a story that came out a few days ago about how there was some oil company executive who was like, oh, everybody's talking about like a windfall profits tax or whatever, and that we're price gouging and that we got to return some of the profits to the people. And we already do that, bro. We already do that. We pay out our shareholders. We pay dividends, bro. Oh my God, you're so stupid. Oh my God, you're so stupid. So just giving money to the shareholders of like Exxon, you think is akin to a windfall profits tax where we could redistribute to the American people in general? Come on, bro. Come on, dude. What a ridiculous point. I think he's responding to that point there, and he's like, look, they think I'm picking on them. They ain't seen nothing yet. Okay, Joe, but what does that mean? I would like it if you got a wee bit more specific on that point, because I would love nothing more than for Democrats to be running on a windfall profits tax. Because look, so the right doesn't have a policy proposal when it comes to inflation, but politically, they're winning the battle on inflation because they're just going out there and saying inflation, 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 and saying, you know, Democrats are in charge. We have bad inflation. Therefore, you know, we're going to be stronger on that. We're going to be better on that. And it's just like an argument by implication, an argument by assumption. So there is no real argument there, but it's working politically because Democrats are in power. And the Democrat response largely has been run for the hills. But really, no, you're supposed to go out there, call out the price gougers. Now, to be fair, some Democrats have done that. Katie Porter in that, shit. I kicked the light that's behind me. Fail. Okay, that should be better. Anyway, so Katie Porter has gone out there and made the argument and showed the chart. Anywhere from like 54% to 60% of inflation is literally just price gouging. And, you know, Biden has now taken some of that rhetoric, used it himself, and now you have, like, the subtle threat of a windfall profits tax, but I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I do not believe they will actually do a windfall profits tax. In order for Biden to convince me of that, he'd have to, you know, talk about it specifically and relentlessly and have to be on the record. Because, by the way, that's what happened with student loan debt reduction, right? Is that he said it time and time again when he was on the campaign trail, and then as president, he saw the numbers with young people, and he felt like his hand was forced, so he had to do some student loan debt reduction. Now, I don't care how he gets there, as long as he gets there eventually. But with the windfall profits tax, you don't hear much in terms of specifics. Now, let me remind you guys, and this is a super important point. We had Woodrow Wilson did a windfall profits tax during World War I to tax the war profiteers. FDR did a windfall profits tax. Jimmy Carter did a windfall profits tax, and by the way, it continued under Ronald Reagan. Now, our politics has gotten so corroded as a result of corruption and big money influence on our politicians that now we see with our, you know, with all the data and research that there is, that price gouging is leading to the inflation, and nobody's even specifically talking about a windfall profits tax. Well, look, that is the answer. That is the answer. It is. It just is. You know, there was some pollster who, maybe about a month or so ago or 3 weeks ago, poll tested which would be the best argument for Democrats to go with going into the midterm. And you're not going to be surprised to hear this. The thing that landed the most was, we're going to tax the wealthy, we're going to tax the corporations, windfall profits tax, and we're going to re-up the extension of the child tax credit. That's exactly what we need to do. If Democrats were out there all the time saying we're going to tax the billionaires, we're going to tax the corporations, we're going to tax the price gougers, we're going to do a windfall profits tax, and we're going to redistribute that through the child tax credit, oh my God. They would be up, they get like a 5-point bump immediately. So look, Biden's getting closer, right? He's getting closer, but he ain't fully there yet. So we'll see what happens in the election, but wow. This, I am surprised. Biden has been saying some of the right things on the campaign trail, albeit his style is lacking because he's basically half dead. All right, now, I have not watched this clip yet, but it was floating around in lefty Twitter circles. And here's what it says. This segment is disgusting. These Fox News hosts are outraged because homeless people are, quote, stealing water and electricity from the city to wash clothes. You have to let people hit rock bottom because then they bounce back up. Democrats want to make rock bottom comfortable. Okay, so the old classic, the homeless have it easy argument on Fox News. Let's watch.
On to the topic. Homeless encampments in liberal Los Angeles have a brand new amenity, working washing machines. Yes, it's true. Vagrants are setting up oversized tents and boasting about how they can steal water and electricity from the city in order to power their own street laundry service.
So this is the thing they're going to be outraged about? This is the thing? I mean, look, wouldn't they hate it more if, like, everybody who's homeless is walking around in a pair of clothes that they haven't been able to change in 2 months? It's all stinky and dirty and grimy. You could smell it from, like, 15 feet away. Wouldn't that be more outrageous? Wouldn't they dislike that more? I mean, this is an instance of, like, you know, an attempt to clean stuff up a little bit, quite literally. And isn't that usually the argument they make on this issue? Is like, we gotta clean stuff up. We gotta clean stuff up. We gotta make it more orderly. We gotta make it more sanitary. Well, that's kind of what this is, right? Like, that's what this is. But no. They're stealing water and electricity from the city. How much is that shit gonna cost? For real. For real. And why is it that, like, this outrages you, but when the government spends, what was the number? Over $2 trillion creating the F-35-2, which didn't even fly for a while, that didn't outrage you? I mean, it's amazing how their outrage meter is just calibrated incorrectly.
In California's other beleaguered liberal city, San Francisco, a widely criticized plan to build a single $1.7 million public toilet could be going down the drain. Governor Gavin Newsom threatening to withhold the funds because of the exorbitant price. Jesse's.
All right, so wait, why isn't the hook to the story that you think Gavin Newsom is based because he's being fiscally conservative and doesn't want to spend $1.7 million on a big public toilet? By the way, I'm sure if it's going to cost $1.7 million, I'm sure that thing is like gigundo, and it's got a zillion toilets, and yeah, I'm sure that's the case. But look, they just said, Gavin Newsom's like, I'm not going to do this because it costs too much money or whatever. Shouldn't the hook to the story be, man, we think Gavin Newsom is based because we would veto that too? But of course they're not. I mean, you guys know the way this works. A Democrat could do literally anything and everything they want, and they would find an angle to just shit on the Democrat. Right? Incredible. Anyway, let's keep going.
Fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, that was a big primetime victory because we've been pushing hard against this toilet.
Yep,
it's going to be 3 years to complete.
I love how this is their big cause. No more toilets for homeless people. No more toilets for homeless people. I can't imagine trotting out this, like, penny-pinching ideology. Again, at the same time, Fox News sat there and said nothing, or they were actively cheerleading for every single bailout of a big financial institution. This is what they do. This is what they do. So, like, literally giving trillions of dollars to Wall Street. A little over $1 million for a big public toilet for homeless people? How dare you? This is what my tax money's going towards? I want my homeless people dirty. That's how I want them. That's how they're supposed to be.
Stall public restroom, not made of gold. It is a regular toilet, and it's costing about $2 million. Outrageous, but we're going to get that cleaned up. The situation in, was it Los Angeles?
Yeah.
You have to let people hit rock bottom, because then they bounce back up. Democrats want to make rock bottom comfortable.
Okay, all right, holy shit. Where do we even begin with this? Not only is rock bottom not comfortable, you can work a full-time job and not be comfortable. The minimum wage in this country is not a living wage. You can't afford a one-bedroom apartment on minimum wage literally anywhere in the country, in all 50 states. So this argument of, like, they're trying to make rock bottom comfortable, bro. All these homeless people are just leeches. They're mooching off of us. I'm so jealous of the homeless. It's the oldest conservative trick in the book. They do this with immigrants too, right? They make these arguments that are like, these immigrants have it easy. They come in the country, they get whatever they want, they get all the money they want, they have it comfortable, they have it better than any American citizen does. And, like, none of that is true. None of that is true. But really what they're doing is they're pitting lower middle class people, working class people. They're pitting them against poor people. And making the argument like you should be jealous of the homeless because look at all the amazing stuff they're getting. The government's not working for you. Now, by the way, the second you propose something to have the government work for middle-class people, they go, I don't want that either. That's very expensive and not good. And I don't like that. I don't want the government helping anybody. So then don't make the arguments of like, hey, middle-class person, don't you want the government working for you? Looks like right now the government's working only for homeless people. Yeah, that's the problem in the country. Big homeless is the problem in the country. I often think that. And I often say that. It's that giant homeless lobby which always gets our politicians to pass pro-homelessness laws. These people are unbelievable. Look, the fact of the matter is, we could clean up all homelessness in this country within a year. We absolutely could do that. Finland, for example, they've done a housing first approach, and they've nearly eradicated homelessness. And by the way, the taxpayer would actually save money if you do that. So it's fiscally conservative, and it's morally correct and responsible. But they would oppose it on these grounds. Just as a matter of principle, you can't have any money go towards literally the worst off among us. That's effectively the argument that they're making. You gotta let people hit rock bottom, bro. That's what you gotta do. You gotta let them suffer, bro. Believe me, even if we gave all homeless people some semblance of a roof over their head, right, just the bare minimum living standards, people are still people. Some people are still gonna struggle, whether it's with mental health problems, or addiction, or both, or just economic problems. That's the nature of reality, but they actively want to make it as difficult as possible for anybody and everybody. Well, that's not true. For the rich, they want to make it as easy as possible, as comfortable as possible, and they want them to get all the welfare in the world. That's why, for example, they're against the inheritance tax, right? Think about that. If there's ever a group of people to tax in society, it is the children of dead mega rich people. And that's something they oppose. They're like, no, Thurston Howell IV